Close your eyes for a moment. The world vanishes. No colors, no edges, no motion. Only the quiet pulse of your heartbeat. Now open them again. Light floods in, shapes emerge, reality returns, swift and absolute. But that reality, the one you see, hear, and touch, is not the world as it is. It is the world as your brain allows it to be. The illusion of contact. We live in the comforting belief that we touch the world directly, that light enters our eyes, that sound fills our ears, that textures press against our skin. But in truth, there is no direct contact, only translation. Light never enters your mind. Sound never crosses into your thoughts. Touch is never felt by your hand, only by your brain. Every sensation is a message, coded, delayed, and interpreted. What you experience as reality is not the physical world itself, but the story your brain tells about it. You don't live in the world. You live in a reconstruction of it, crafted in real time by billions of neurons, shaping chaos into meaning. The river of signals. Imagine a river made of light, sound, and touch, a current that never stops. Every second, trillions of signals crash into your senses. Photons strike your retinas, compressing entire landscapes into patterns of electricity. Air vibrations ripple through your ears, carrying laughter, language, thunder, and silence. Microscopic receptors beneath your skin detect the faintest brush of wind or warmth. Each of these sensations travels toward the same destination, the cerebral cortex, the grand conductor of experience. But none of these raw signals mean anything by themselves. Light is just vibration. Sound, oscillation, touch, pressure. Meaning begins only when the brain starts to listen. The brain as interpreter. Your brain does not see. It interprets electrical impulses from the eyes. It does not hear. It decodes patterns of air pressure captured by the ears. It does not feel. It reconstructs data from receptors spread across your skin. Every second, this organ, weighing little more than a grapefruit, translates chaos into coherence. Like a great artist painting from fragments, it merges data into a unified world, a continuous, vibrant, living illusion. The boundary between you and everything else exists only because the brain defines it. Sensory windows. Each sense opens a different window onto the same universe. Vision is precision. It gives structure and distance. Hearing is rhythm. It connects events across time. Touch is presence. It grounds you in the physical. Together, they form a trinity of awareness. Light tells you where. Sound tells you when. Touch tells you that you exist. Without them, the self collapses into the void, a mind with no mirror to see itself reflected. The fragile construction of reality. Even now, as you read this, your eyes dart across the screen in tiny, rapid movements called saccades. They jump several times per second, yet you never see the jumps. Your brain erases the blur between fixations and stitches the fragments into a smooth, unbroken picture. You are living inside a constant hallucination, a useful one, generated by predictive computation. The same happens with hearing. Your brain fills in the missing pieces of muffled speech, completing the gaps with what it expects to hear. Touch, too, is no exception. When you rest your hand on the table, your skin does not feel every molecule of wood. Your brain smooths, edits, simplifies. so you can live without drowning in detail. What you perceive is not accuracy, but efficiency. The dance between senses. Reality, as you know it, emerges only when your senses cooperate. When light and sound synchronize, you see a person speaking. When touch and vision align, you feel the object you hold. But when these signals fall out of sync, when your brain receives conflicting inputs, the illusion cracks.
You see a puppet move its mouth,
But hear the voice elsewhere. Your brain panics and reassigns meaning. It chooses a version of reality that feels most stable. Perception is negotiation. Truth is consensus. Between the world and the mind. The real miracle of the senses is not that they connect us to the world, but that they separate us from it just enough to understand it. If we were flooded by unfiltered reality, we would drown in noise. Instead, evolution gave us boundaries: skin, eardrums, retinas, membranes that filter chaos into clarity. Through these narrow gates, we sip the universe, drop by drop, and call it life. Closing thought. You are not a passive observer. You are a sculptor, carving meaning from vibration. The light that reaches your eyes is ancient, the sound already fading, the touch already gone. And yet, in your mind, they converge into the eternal now. This is the surface of reality, a moving mirror shimmering between the world that exists and the one your brain creates. And so begins our journey down the river of perception, toward the gates of light, the spirals of sound, and the living fabric of touch. There are 3 silent sentinels standing between you and the universe: your eyes, your ears, and your skin. They never sleep, never stop, never complain. Each second, they guard the borders of the self, translating chaos into sensation, vibration into vision, pressure into presence. They are not mere organs. They are ambassadors between worlds. The eyes, mirrors of light. Light doesn't enter your brain, it dances on a fragile film at the back of your eyes, the retina. There, billions of photoreceptors, rods and cones, wait like patient astronomers, catching the silent rain of photons. Each photon, a messenger from the outside. Each impact, a tiny electrical spark. But these receptors don't see shapes or colors. They see only contrast, light and dark, change and stillness. The brain must compose the rest. When you look at a sunset, you don't see the light itself. You see your brain's interpretation of that light. A reconstruction painted by neural brushes with colors that exist only inside you. The retina is not just a screen, it's an active processor. It compresses, filters, and refines before sending the signal deeper, to the thalamus, the brain's first gatekeeper. Already, the world has been edited. The light you see is no longer the light that was. The ears, architects of time. While the eyes paint space, the ears sculpt time. Everything you hear, from a whisper to a thunderclap, is nothing but air in motion. Your eardrum trembles, bones within your middle ear amplify the vibration, and deep inside, a coiled labyrinth, the cochlea, transforms that motion into code. Tiny hair cells, standing in delicate rows, bend under invisible waves. Their movement releases ions, generating currents that become sound. The lower the tone, the deeper in the spiral it resonates. The higher the pitch, the closer to the base it vibrates. This is your first music, a direct symphony between air and biology. And yet, the brain hears far more than physics. It hears intention, emotion, memory. It can recognize a loved one's voice even in the noise of a crowd. Hearing, at its essence, is trusting air to tell you the truth. The skin, the mind's oldest sense. Before sight, before hearing, there was touch. Even in the womb, before a fetus can see or hear, it feels. The pulse of the mother's heartbeat, the rhythm of life through fluid and pressure. The skin is the brain's oldest ally, a vast continent of nerves that registers temperature, texture, pain, and pleasure. Each square centimeter contains thousands of receptors, each tuned to a different message: a caress, a cut, a chill, a burn. It is the only sense that covers your entire body, a living map of contact between you and the world. And unlike sight or sound, touch cannot be faked. You can imagine colors and melodies, but not warmth, not pressure, not pain. The skin speaks the most honest language, one of presence. The trinity of perception: eyes, ears, and skin. 3 different gates, one single purpose: connection. They filter the universe, translate it into electricity, and deliver it to the brain, the inner sanctum where meaning is made. But these gates are not perfect. They lie, distort, and adapt. The eyes see what they expect. The ears fill in missing sounds. The skin forgets constant pressure. Their imperfections are not flaws. They are the price of clarity. They allow the mind to focus on change, not chaos. If you could feel, hear, and see everything at once, you would cease to exist as a conscious being. You would dissolve into the noise of existence. Instead, your senses form a delicate balance, a selective window through which the brain peers outward, and in that filtered perception, you find meaning. Closing thought. Every moment, you live behind the gates of your senses. You never step outside, yet the world feels within reach. Light touches your eyes. Sound brushes your ears. The world presses against your skin, and through them, you believe you know reality. But perhaps what you truly know is the art of translation, the eternal performance of these watchers at the gate. They are the first dreamers, the first storytellers, turning the silent universe into experience. You awaken in the middle of the night. The room is dark. For a few seconds, you don't know where you are. No sights, no sounds, no warmth, only your breath. Then a soft creak, a whisper of air, the faint texture of the bedsheet under your fingers, and suddenly you return. Your senses have found you. That moment, when the world comes back into focus, is not just perception. It's identity reconstruction. The senses rebuild the self from fragments. The birth of I. Before you can say, I am, your brain must feel something. The warmth of air, the pressure of gravity, the hum of the world. Without sensation, there is no anchor, no reference point for existence. Even in dreams, when your body lies still, the mind simulates touch, sound, and vision. Ghosts of reality that keep your sense of being intact. In this way, perception is not a tool, it's the foundation of the self. You don't have senses, you are your senses. The unity of experience. The miracle of consciousness is not that it perceives many things, but that it perceives them as one. You don't see light and hear sound and feel the floor. You see, hear, and feel your world. Your brain constantly merges streams of data from eyes, ears, and skin into a single, fluid experience. A unified movie with you at the center. This merging happens in milliseconds, coordinated by a region called the superior colliculus, where visual, auditory, and tactile signals meet. From there, the parietal cortex creates a sense of body position, proprioception, so that you know where your hand is, even in the dark. Your brain is not just watching the world, it is locating you within it. Without this map of self in space, the world would be noise, a movie without a viewer. The silent conductor. Imagine an orchestra without a conductor. Every instrument plays, but the music is chaos. That's what perception would be without the integration systems of your brain. The thalamus filters sensory data, deciding what deserves attention. The cortex synchronizes timing so that what you see and what you hear align. And the insula, the quiet island of awareness, connects sensations with emotions. Touch painlessly without noticing, that's numbness. Hear a sound without caring, that's indifference. But when feeling and awareness unite, that's experience. It's not enough to sense the world. You must feel it for it to become yours. The mirror within.
Your senses are mirrors.
But not the kind that reflect objects. They reflect you. Every sight, every sound, every touch is a question answered by the brain. Am I safe? Am I here? Am I real? When you see your reflection, your brain doesn't just recognize a face, it reaffirms existence. That's me. But here's the paradox. The same systems that confirm the self can also deceive it. Hallucinations, phantom limbs, dreams. These are moments when the mirror reflects without light. The brain generates sensations even without external input, proving that the self is not found in the senses themselves, but in how the brain interprets them. The self as story. At every moment, the senses feed the brain a stream of raw data. But the brain doesn't just record, it narrates. It stitches input into continuity. This is me, in this place, at this time. If that continuity breaks, as in amnesia, deep anesthesia, or sensory deprivation, the sense of I begins to fade. Astronauts describe it vividly. In the void of space, without up or down, without sound or smell, the self begins to unravel. Only the heartbeat and breath remain to remind them they still exist. The story must continue, or the narrator disappears. The fragile bridge. Your senses are not windows. They are bridges built from neurons and trust. They can be tricked by illusions, drugs, or fatigue. But even in deception, they serve their purpose, to keep the mind tethered to reality, however distorted. Without that bridge, the self drifts into darkness. With it, you walk across the roaring void and call it life. Closing thought. You are not a soul trapped in a body. You are a body dreaming itself alive. The eyes, ears, and skin are the boundaries of that dream, the skin of consciousness. Through them, the universe becomes intimate. Through them, you discover yourself.
And as we move forward, beyond senses, beyond the surface of the world, we'll see how the brain transforms these whispers of reality into patterns of perception, memory, and meaning. Light is the oldest messenger. Long before sound, long before touch, there was light, streaming through the universe, carrying stories of stars long dead. Every photon that touches your eye has traveled an impossible distance, sometimes from the sun, sometimes from a lamp, sometimes from a star that burned out before the first humans ever walked the earth. And yet, in the instant it meets your retina, it becomes something deeply personal: your vision. A collision that creates sight. A single photon, a particle of pure energy, strikes a molecule of rhodopsin inside a photoreceptor. In that tiny collision, a cascade begins. Chemical bonds twist, proteins shift shape, an electrical signal surges upward through the optic nerve toward the visual cortex. That's it. That's vision. A microscopic chemical event multiplied 1 billion times per second. No glowing screen, no pictures in your head. Just electrochemical storms painting illusions upon the dark canvas of your mind. The world you see is born from lightning. The retina's hidden genius. Most people imagine the eye as a camera, a lens, a screen, an image projected. But your retina is not passive film. It's an intelligent network, a layer of neurons that edits reality before it even reaches your brain. Photoreceptors at the back of the retina detect light and shadow. Bipolar cells compare differences between them. Ganglion cells send compact, coded messages: edges, movement, contrast. Only about 10% of visual information actually travels to the brain. The rest is filtered, optimized, compressed. You don't see everything. You see what matters most. That's why you can watch a sunset and feel beauty. Not because your eyes capture more light, but because they know what to ignore. The blind spot.
There's a hole in your vision.
Right now, as you read this, there's a place on this page you cannot see. That's where the optic nerve exits your eye. No receptors, no image. A literal gap in perception. And yet, you don't notice it. Your brain fills it in. It guesses what should be there and paints it over seamlessly. This is the quiet brilliance of perception. It values continuity over truth. Your brain would rather lie to you than leave a hole in the story. The language of light. Light doesn't come in colors. Color is how your brain translates frequency. Short wavelengths feel blue, long ones red. Mix them, and the brain invents new hues that don't even exist in physics, like pink. Every color is a negotiation between biology and mind. When sunlight hits your skin, it's a physical event. When it hits your eyes, it becomes poetry. That same physics that powers lasers and satellites is also what paints the sky, what shapes emotion, what builds memory. Because the brain doesn't just receive light, it feels it. Seeing is remembering. You never see the present moment. By the time photons hit your retina and your brain interprets them, the world has already moved on, by about 100 milliseconds. Every image you see is technically a memory, a reconstruction of what just happened. And yet, the illusion is perfect. The brain stitches time into fluid motion, fooling you into believing you are living in the now. It's not deception, it's compassion. Your brain edits the delay so that you can live without noticing how slow consciousness really is. Light as emotion. There's a reason you feel warmth in the golden hour of sunset and melancholy in the deep blue of dusk. Light speaks directly to your emotions. Special cells in the retina connect to the limbic system, the seat of feeling and mood. They regulate not just sight, but circadian rhythm, your body's inner clock. When light fades, melatonin rises, Dreams prepare their stage. So when you stare into candlelight and feel calm, it's not imagination, it's chemistry. Light tells your body when to wake and your soul when to rest. Closing thought. In every blink, your brain performs a miracle, turning invisible radiation into a living, breathing world. You are not just looking at light, you are becoming it. Every color, every reflection, every glimmer of understanding. It all begins with photons falling softly upon your eyes and ending as vision within the cathedral of your mind. So the next time you open your eyes to the morning sun, remember, you are seeing the oldest story in the universe, the journey of light from chaos to consciousness. At first glance, the retina seems simple, a thin film of cells lining the back of the eye, a biological camera sensor. But under a microscope, it reveals something astonishing. The retina doesn't just receive the image, it thinks about it. Before light ever reaches your consciousness, before it becomes a tree, a face, or a word, the retina is already interpreting, filtering, and encoding the signal in its own mysterious language. The first layer of intelligence. Your eye contains over 100 million photoreceptors, rods for twilight, cones for daylight. But these receptors don't communicate directly with your brain. They pass their signals through a complex neural network composed of at least 10 different cell types: bipolar, horizontal, amacrine, and ganglion cells, each performing a specific computational role. Light travels inward through transparent layers of neurons before striking the photoreceptors. Then, the signal flows backward from photoreceptors to ganglion cells, an odd, reversed architecture that baffled scientists for decades. Yet, in this backward design lies purpose. Every layer refines the image, like a sculptor removing noise from stone. The retina doesn't send a photograph to the brain, it sends a compressed description: edges, contrasts, movement, and change. 1,000,000 neurons reducing the chaos of the world into a pattern the brain can understand. The Edge Detectives. Imagine walking into a foggy forest. You can't see everything, but you can make out shapes. The curve of a branch, the outline of a tree trunk. That's exactly how your retina works. Special ganglion cells, known as edge detectors, compare light intensity between neighboring photoreceptors. They highlight borders, the boundaries of objects, allowing your brain to reconstruct shapes even in poor visibility. Other cells specialize in motion detection. They fire only when light changes position, transforming still frames into fluid perception. Without these early computations, the world would be a flat, shifting fog. Colorful perhaps, but without structure or meaning. The retina builds the skeleton of sight long before your visual cortex paints it with detail. The code of change. Your eyes are never still. Even when you stare at one point, tiny involuntary microsaccades jitter the image across the retina. Why? Because if light falls constantly on the same receptors, they stop responding. They adapt. The world fades. The retina is not designed for constancy. It's built for change. Each neuron fires not to report what is, but what just changed. It's an organ of curiosity, forever whispering, "What's new? What's different?" This is the first lesson of perception. To see the world, your brain must first learn to ignore it. The information highway. Once the retinal layers finish their computation, the result travels through the optic nerve, a dense bundle of about 1,000,000 fibers. Each fiber carries a fragment of the image, encoded not as pixels, but as spikes of electricity. No two spikes are the same. Each neuron speaks in its own rhythm, a Morse code of the mind.
Patterns of firing frequency,
Precise timing between bursts and synchronization between neighboring cells form the language of vision. The retina doesn't say, "This is a tree." It sends a rapid-fire pattern like a melody, and the brain must learn to recognize that melody as tree. This is not image transfer, it's translation. The brain's first conversation. The optic nerve leads to the lateral geniculate nucleus in the thalamus, the brain's central relay station. Here, the signal pauses, filtered once more. The LGN sharpens contrasts, balances timing, and prepares the message for the visual cortex. It's a negotiation between two worlds, the eye sending coded impulses upward, the cortex sending feedback downward. Even before you consciously see, your brain is already asking questions. Is this movement important? Is this danger? Is this familiar? Sight is not passive reception. It's a dialogue, a constant conversation between what's outside and what's expected inside. Why the retina thinks. Evolution placed part of the brain inside the eye. The retina and cortex are, in fact, siblings, outgrowths of the same embryonic tissue. When you see, the first layer of that process happens not in the head, but in the eye itself. In that sense, you don't merely look at the world, you think it into existence. The light that falls upon your retina is raw and meaningless. But as it's processed, as signals dance through layers of neurons, patterns emerge, edges, movement, contrast, and those patterns are what the brain learns to recognize as reality. You never truly see the external world. You see the retinal hypothesis, the brain's best guess about what the world should be. Closing thought. Every time you open your eyes, you don't just receive light, you decode it. The retina's secret is not vision, but interpretation. It doesn't tell the brain what's out there. It tells the brain what's worth noticing. And that selectivity is the foundation of consciousness, because to notice something is the first act of awareness. So, the next time light meets your eyes, remember, you're not a camera taking pictures of the world. You're a living translator, turning radiation into revelation, photons into meaning. Light has already entered the eyes. It has been transformed, coded, and transmitted. But the story of sight doesn't end at the retina. It's only now that the mind begins to see. Inside your skull, deep within the folds of the occipital cortex, lies a landscape where electricity becomes experience, where silent pulses of energy become the living world. The birth of the image. The visual cortex, the V1 area, is where it begins. Each neuron there receives a piece of the retinal code, a line, a direction, a flicker of movement. Thousands of these neurons fire in synchrony, and from their patterns emerges the first shape. It's not a full picture yet, more like a charcoal sketch, an outline waiting to be colored. Neighboring regions, V2, V3, V4, add texture, motion, color, and depth. The occipital lobe becomes a living canvas, painted not with pigments, but with the language of spikes and silence. Your brain, without eyes of its own, dreams the world into being. The orchestra of sight. To see is not the work of one area, but of a symphony. The visual cortex detects lines. The temporal lobe recognizes faces. The parietal lobe measures distance and motion. The prefrontal cortex interprets meaning. All of them play their parts, each neuron an instrument, each impulse a note. Some respond to the tilt of a line, others to a flash of red, others to the face of someone you love. And together, in a rhythm faster than thought, they create the world you see, not once, but dozens of times per second. Every glance is a performance, every blink a pause between acts. The mind's projector.
But here's the quiet truth.
You don't see with your eyes. You see with your brain. The eyes are the senses, but the image you perceive is reconstructed within. If the brain stops receiving input, it doesn't go dark. It starts to imagine. Close your eyes. You can still see shapes, colors, motion, the echo of sight, the cortex painting from memory. The same circuits that interpret vision can invent it. That's why dreams feel real. That's why imagination uses the same neural brushstrokes as reality. Your mind is not watching a film. It's writing one in real time. Color and emotion. Color is not in the world. It's born in the V4 region of your brain. There, wavelengths become sensations. Red becomes warmth. Blue becomes calm. Green becomes life. When you look at a sunset, you're not just observing light. You're feeling chemistry, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin blending with the hues of perception. The cortex doesn't stop at describing. It feels. Every shade, every contrast is tied to memory and emotion. That's why the same color can mean peace to one person and sorrow to another. Your visual symphony plays differently for every soul that sees it. Seeing as understanding. As signals travel from V1 to higher regions, something extraordinary happens. Recognition. Your brain compares each new pattern to billions of stored templates. Edges become objects, faces become friends, symbols become meaning. The brain doesn't ask, "What do I see?" It asks, "What does this remind me of?" Every moment of vision is a negotiation between memory and presence. Your brain fills the gaps, smooths transitions, and adds stories where none exist. In that sense, seeing is not passive observation, it is creation. The inner symphony. The final act of vision is not in the occipital cortex, but in the way all sensory regions harmonize. When you look at the sea, you don't just see the waves, you hear them. You imagine the salt on your tongue. You feel the wind on your skin. Your brain merges it all into one coherent world, a composition of light, sound, touch, memory. That is the visual symphony, a concert performed inside the mind's invisible theater. Closing thought. Every photon that enters your eye becomes part of a story, a pattern woven into your sense of being. The retina captures, the cortex interprets, the self awakens. Vision is not the act of looking outward, but of the world looking back through you, reflected, processed, reimagined. And every moment you open your eyes, you conduct that symphony again. 1,000 billion neurons playing the light of existence. Waves in the air. Sound begins not in your ears, but in the trembling of the world. A falling leaf, a whisper, a heartbeat. Each sends ripples through the air, tiny pressure waves expanding outward in invisible concentric circles. The air becomes the ocean, and you, without noticing, are always swimming in it. The dance of pressure. Every sound, from thunder to a sigh, is simply air molecules moving back and forth. They don't travel far, they vibrate in place, passing their energy like a message in a crowd.
When the motion reaches your ear, it's still nothing more than mechanical energy, a vibration, a pulse, a wave. Yet your brain will soon turn it into emotion, language, and memory. But before that can happen, the sound must find its way inward, through the delicate corridors of your ear. The outer ear, collector of worlds. The journey begins at the pinna, the curved outer shell of flesh that captures sound like a satellite dish. Its ridges and folds are not random. They subtly alter incoming waves, helping your brain infer direction, whether a sound comes from above, behind, or below. From there, the wave enters the ear canal, a narrow tunnel that amplifies frequencies between 2,000 and 5,000 hertz, the very range of human voices. Evolution has tuned your anatomy to hear each other perfectly. The air then strikes the tympanic membrane, the eardrum, a sheet so thin it vibrates to a whisper, and thus the dance of air becomes the rhythm of hearing. The middle ear, tiny drummers. Behind the eardrum, 3 bones wait in perfect alignment: the malleus, incus, and stapes, the hammer, anvil, and stirrup. They are the smallest bones in the human body, yet they form one of its most precise mechanisms. Each vibration of the eardrum is relayed through this chain of levers, amplified over 20-fold. The last bone, the stirrup, presses against the oval window of the inner ear, transferring the trembling air into the fluid realm beyond. Now the sound leaves the world of air and enters the world of water. The inner ear, birth of the signal. Beyond the oval window lies the cochlea, a spiral shell no bigger than a pea, filled with fluid and lined with thousands of hair cells. When the fluid ripples, microscopic cilia bend like seagrass in a current. Each bend opens ion channels, turning mechanical motion into electrical energy. The music of motion becomes the language of the brain. High-pitched sounds excite the base of the cochlea. Low ones travel farther inside, to the apex. Your ear performs a Fourier transform naturally, sorting every tone by frequency with mathematical precision. What engineers call frequency analysis, your biology performs in silence every moment of your life. Hearing the invisible. Think of what this means. You are constantly decoding waves you cannot see. The crack of a branch, the rhythm of footsteps, the murmur of a loved one's breath. They are all patterns in air pressure translated instantly into perception. You do not just hear the world, you understand it through vibration. In a way, you are never separate from your surroundings. Every sound that reaches you literally moves you, vibrates your eardrum, your bones, your cells. Sound is the most intimate of senses. It doesn't stop at your skin, it enters you, reshapes you, and becomes part of your inner rhythm. The poetry of silence. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the moment between vibrations, the pause that allows meaning to emerge. Without silence, there is only noise. Without rest, no rhythm. The brain needs that pause to predict, to interpret, to feel. Just as music relies on rest, so perception relies on stillness. Sound, then, is the art of contrast, presence and absence, motion and calm, air and meaning. Closing thought. In every breath of wind, in every heartbeat, the world sings. Your ears are the bridge between chaos and pattern, between pressure and perception. Every whisper you hear is a vibration that began somewhere, a leaf,
a throat, a string, and ended in the quiet storm of your mind. And all of it, every note, every tremor of existence, was once nothing but waves in the air. The spirals of hearing. Once the sound enters the inner ear, it is no longer just vibration. It becomes a dance inside the cochlea, a spiral shell that hides one of nature's most precise instruments. It is here, in this coiled labyrinth of liquid and hair, that the universe of sound is translated into the language of thought. The architecture of the spiral. The cochlea looks small, but within its spiral are over 15,000 sensory hair cells, each tuned to a different pitch. If you could unroll the cochlea, it would stretch to about 1.5 inches, a tiny piano keyboard made of living tissue. At its base, the membrane is stiff and narrow, vibrating to high frequencies. At its apex, it's wide and soft, resonating to low tones. Every note, every sound you've ever heard has its own address along this spiral. From the cry of a newborn to the hum of a machine, your ear maps them all, turning chaos into melody. The hair cells, keepers of vibration. Within the fluid of the cochlea float the inner and outer hair cells. The outer hair cells amplify motion. They act like tiny motors, stretching and contracting to boost faint vibrations so the signal can be heard clearly. The inner hair cells, meanwhile, do the listening. When they bend under pressure, ion channels open, allowing potassium and calcium to flow in. This creates an electrical pulse, a signal that races along the auditory nerve to the brain stem. And so, movement becomes meaning. These cells are delicate. A single loud noise can kill them forever. They do not regenerate. Every hearing loss begins with the silent death of these microscopic dancers. Protecting them is protecting the language of the world. The basilar membrane, the living analyzer. The hair cells sit atop the basilar membrane, which vibrates like a ribbon in water. When the stapes pushes on the oval window, a wave travels through the fluid, moving the membrane in a traveling pattern. It's a miracle of biomechanics. Each frequency travels until it finds the spot that matches its wavelength. Then the energy peaks and fades. In this way, the ear separates a complex sound into its individual notes. Every song, every spoken word, every rustle of leaves is decomposed and understood by this moving wave of tissue. Phase locking, rhythm in the nerve. Not all frequencies are decoded by place. Low tones are tracked by timing. The neurons of the auditory nerve fire in synchrony with the waveform, spiking each time a wave peaks. This phase locking gives the brain a direct sense of rhythm. That's why you can feel the beat of a song in your bones, why music makes you move without thought. The brain doesn't just hear, it entrains itself to vibration. Your neural circuits sway with every pulse of sound. The brainstem orchestra. Once the electrical signals leave the cochlea, they reach the brainstem nuclei, the cochlear nucleus, the superior olive, the inferior colliculus. Here, timing and location are compared. Your brain computes where a sound came from by measuring microsecond differences between your ears. This is how you can tell that someone spoke behind you or that a bee buzzes near your right ear. It's astonishingly fast, faster than conscious thought. By the time you turn your head, your brain already knows where to look. The rhythm of perception. Every tone you hear is shaped by time and frequency together. The cochlea provides the notes, the brainstem gives them rhythm. Together, they create a perception of flow, music, language, motion. You don't hear static sounds, you hear events unfolding in time. That's why hearing feels alive, why silence after music feels like the world itself has stopped breathing. Sound is not an object. It's a story unfolding, moment by moment. The fragility of harmony. When the cochlea is damaged, the symphony collapses. Tinnitus, the phantom ringing, is the brain's desperate attempt to fill the silence left by lost hair cells. It invents noise to replace what it can no longer receive. In that sense, the ear teaches us something profound. Silence is never truly empty. Even when deprived, the brain continues to sing. Closing thought. The cochlea is not just a structure, it is a translator between worlds, from movement to emotion, from vibration to meaning. When you hear a song, you're not just detecting frequencies, you're reliving an ancient miracle, the way matter becomes melody and air becomes soul. And deep within that spiral of fluid and hair, 1,000 tiny beings dance, transforming the tremors of existence into the rhythm of life. From noise to meaning. Sound has entered your mind. The cochlea has translated vibration into voltage.
The auditory nerve
Hums with impulses. And now the brain begins its grand decoding. But this next step is not mechanical. It is cognitive poetry, turning chaos into meaning, turning pressure waves into understanding. The journey through the brain. From the cochlea, signals climb upward, first to the brainstem, then to the thalamus, and finally to the auditory cortex in the temporal lobe. This pathway isn't just a relay, it's a progression. Each station adds a new layer of interpretation. The brainstem aligns timing, the thalamus filters importance, the cortex recognizes patterns. You can think of it like a newsroom. Noise floods in, editors select headlines, writers give it meaning. The raw chaos of sound is shaped into something you can understand. The language of neurons. Inside the auditory cortex, neurons are tuned to specific frequencies, but also to patterns, intervals, and rhythms. Some fire for a pure tone, others for the rising pitch of a siren. Some even respond only to the human voice. Their circuits evolved to recognize our most social sound. And when several of these specialized clusters light up together, the brain begins to hear words. You're no longer listening to frequencies, you're listening to meaning. Language is not in your ears. It's in the choreography of neurons that associate tone with concept, sound with intention, voice with emotion. Filtering the world. At any moment, your ears receive an ocean of sound, hundreds of frequencies overlapping, and yet you can focus on one voice in a crowd, one instrument in an orchestra, one word in the dark. This miracle is known as the cocktail party effect, the brain's ability to tune attention. The prefrontal cortex helps decide which sounds matter right now. The thalamus turns down the rest. It's selective hearing, but not rudeness. It's survival. Without it, you'd be overwhelmed by the storm of vibration around you. The emotional color of sound. Sound isn't neutral. Even before meaning, the amygdala reacts to tone, a sudden bang, a gentle lullaby, a voice trembling with fear. Long before language, humans evolved to feel sound. That's why a minor chord feels sad, why dissonance feels tense, why silence after a fight
feels deafening. Emotion gives sound its gravity. You don't just hear, you feel the vibration of the world. Every whisper of sound carries weight, and your brain paints it with the color of memory. The silence between sounds. Silence is not nothingness. It's part of sound's grammar. Without gaps, words blur together. Without rests, music becomes noise. Your brain needs those tiny pauses to segment, interpret, breathe. Even at the neural level, silence matters. It resets firing patterns, giving neurons time to prepare for the next wave of meaning. That's why quiet moments feel restorative. The brain is literally recalibrating between phases of the world. The construction of understanding. By the time sound reaches consciousness, it is no longer vibration, it's concept. The temporal lobe decodes phonemes. The frontal lobe predicts the next word. The hippocampus stores new associations. When you listen to someone speak, you're predicting half of what they'll say before they say it. The mind doesn't just hear, it anticipates. That's how we keep up with the lightning speed of conversation. You are, in a sense, always reading the future through sound. Noise, meaning, and music. What is music, then, if not organized prediction? Your brain delights in pattern. When it guesses right, dopamine flows. When a melody resolves, you feel peace. When it breaks expectation, you feel thrill. Music is a dialogue between the known and the unknown, the expected and the surprising. In every rhythm, your brain rediscovers its own structure, its craving for pattern, its joy in completion. Closing thought. From the rustle of leaves to a whispered word, from noise to language, from chaos to harmony, sound becomes meaning only because your mind creates it. The world offers vibration. You offer interpretation. And in that quiet collaboration between matter and mind, between physics and feeling, lies one of the purest miracles of being human. You don't just hear the world, you give it a voice. The skin as universe. Before sight, before sound, before words, there was touch. Touch is the oldest sense, the first language between living beings. It was there when the first cells brushed against one another in the ancient seas. It is still here, written across the vast surface of your body, a living map of sensation. The living frontier. Your skin is not just a barrier, it is the largest organ of perception, 2 square meters of living intelligence wrapped around you like a soft frontier between self and world. Every square centimeter contains millions of sensors, each specialized for a kind of touch. Pressure, temperature, vibration, pain, texture. They are your nerve endings, tiny watchtowers constantly sending updates to the brain about what the world feels like. Even when you sit still, they whisper about air, warmth, and gravity. You are never truly disconnected from the outside, you're constantly conversing with it through skin. Layers of sensation. The outermost layer, the epidermis, guards against harm, a fortress of dead cells and keratin. Beneath it lies the dermis, a forest of blood vessels, sweat glands, and nerves. Deeper still is the subcutaneous layer, a cushion of fat that absorbs shock and preserves warmth. Within these layers dwell the instruments of perception, mechanoreceptors, thermoreceptors, nociceptors, each playing a unique note in the symphony of touch. The receptors, translators of the world. Meissner's corpuscles, tiny, fast sensors near the skin's surface, detecting gentle brushes and light textures.
Merkel's discs,
steady and precise. They perceive shape and edges, the letters under your fingers as you read. Pacinian corpuscles, deep and sensitive to vibration, they resonate when your phone hums or when thunder rolls. Ruffini endings, slow and stretching, telling you how your skin moves with your muscles. Thermoreceptors sense warmth and cold, alerting you to the comfort of sunlight or the danger of frost. Nociceptors, the guardians of pain. Their cry pulls your hand away before you even think. Each receptor is a storyteller, translating the language of the world into the language of ions, which the brain reads as experience. The map of the body. If you could look inside your brain, in the somatosensory cortex, you'd see a distorted human figure, the homunculus. Its hands are enormous, its lips swollen, its back and legs tiny. This is not deformity, it's representation. The areas of skin richest in senses take up more space in the brain. That's why your fingertips feel more vivid than your back, and why a kiss feels like lightning. Your body's map inside your brain is sculpted by experience. Play an instrument for years, and your fingers will claim more territory. Lose a limb, and its region may be taken over by another sense. Touch reshapes the mind as much as the mind interprets touch. The skin remembers. Touch has memory. When a child is held, its nervous system learns calm. When neglected, it learns vigilance and fear. Even as adults, a gentle hand on the shoulder can quiet storms within the brain. This is because oxytocin, the bonding hormone, floods your body when touched with care. Touch is not only data, it is emotion, biology, and story combined. The space between. What happens when you touch something? Do you meet it, or do you merge? At the microscopic level, you never truly make contact. Electrons repel one another. The feeling of pressure is an illusion created by your receptors as forces push back against your skin. In a strange way, touch is always a conversation at a distance, a negotiation of proximity. And yet, it feels so intimate because your brain translates that negotiation into belonging. Touch is how you know you exist in relation to something else. Closing thought. Your skin is the world's first storyteller. It translates the wind, the rain, the warmth of another person into sensations that build your sense of being alive. To live without touch is to drift unanchored in silence. To live with it is to be constantly reminded that the universe is not separate from you. It's pressing gently against your skin, reminding you, you are here. You are real. You are part of me. Every moment, your skin speaks in many dialects. Some whispers are soft, a breeze brushing your arm. Some are urgent, a cut, a burn, a sudden sting. Each sensation is a story told in the language of ions and impulses. To touch is to interpret. To feel is to translate the world's energy into human meaning. The chorus of receptors. Your skin is an orchestra, and its instruments are the receptors, each tuned to a different kind of stimulus. Pressure, temperature, and pain are not separate senses. They are variations of one continuous narrative, a conversation about safety, contact, and change. Mechanoreceptors speak in the language of movement and form. They tell you the weight of a cup, the softness of a blanket, the shape of a key in your hand. Thermoreceptors speak in gradients of warmth and cold, translating the invisible physics of heat into comfort or warning. Nociceptors, the pain sensors, are the dramatic narrators. They exist not to torment, but to protect. Their every signal says, "Stop. Something threatens the vessel of your being." Together, they weave a tapestry of sensation, rich, dynamic, endlessly informative.
Pressure, the weight of the world.
When you press your fingertips to a surface, a series of receptors awaken in a precisely choreographed dance. Merkel cells respond to steady pressure, allowing you to feel texture, edges, and patterns. They are what let a sculptor sense the grain of marble, or a reader of Braille interpret words by touch. Meissner corpuscles are fast and fleeting. They detect light brushing, movement, vibration. They make you aware of a moth landing on your skin, or the gentle stroke of another person's hand. Pacinian corpuscles, buried deeper, respond to rapid vibrations and impacts. They let you sense your phone's buzz in your pocket or the resonance of a train under your feet. Pressure is not just force, it is relationship. It tells you where your body ends and the world begins. Heat and cold, the thermal poets. Temperature is the skin's second language. Thermoreceptors, scattered like stars, detect minute changes in heat, as little as 0.1 degrees Celsius. They come in two forms. Cold receptors, using the TRPM8 channel, respond to coolness and menthol-like sensations. Warm receptors, using TRPV channels, activate with heat and capsaicin, the fiery molecule in chili peppers. It's a poetic symmetry. The same receptors that guard you from fire also let you enjoy the warmth of a hug or the comfort of sunlight. When you plunge your hand into icy water, cold receptors first cry out. Then, as they fatigue, nociceptors take over, translating cold into pain. The line between pleasure and warning is thin, a perfect metaphor for life itself. Pain, the guardian and the teacher. Pain is often seen as the enemy, but it is one of the brain's greatest gifts. Nociceptors, specialized nerve endings, respond only to potentially damaging stimuli. Extreme pressure, temperature, or chemicals from injured tissue.
When you touch something hot,
A nociceptor fires instantly, sending an emergency signal through A-delta fibers, fast pain, and C fibers, slow, lingering pain. The signal reaches the spinal cord, where an immediate reflex pulls your hand away, long before your brain consciously understands what happened. That's the brilliance of the system. It saves you first, explains later. But pain isn't only a warning, it is memory embodied. When pain subsides, the neural trace remains, teaching you where not to go, what to avoid, how to survive. Pain is the body's way of writing rules in the nervous system's code. When pain goes rogue. Sometimes, though, the story misfires. After injury, chronic pain can emerge. The brain continues to hear danger long after the wound has healed. In conditions like phantom limb pain, people feel sensations in a body part that no longer exists. The brain, still holding the map of the missing limb, refuses to accept its absence. It's not madness, it's loyalty. The brain clings to the shape of what once was. Such pain reveals a haunting truth. The body ends at the skin, but the self extends beyond it. The interplay of touch and emotion. Every physical sensation carries an emotional echo. A soft blanket can soothe anxiety. A sudden prick can trigger fear. A warm embrace can calm a racing heart.
This is because touch signals travel not only to the somatosensory cortex, but also to the insula and amygdala, regions tied to emotion and empathy. Your brain doesn't just register what is touched, it interprets why and by whom. A friendly pat releases oxytocin. A harsh grip triggers cortisol. Touch can heal or harm long before words appear. That is why isolation hurts physically. The absence of touch starves a part of the nervous system that expects connection. To the brain, loneliness is a kind of sensory deprivation. The stories of sensation. Pressure tells you where you are. Heat tells you how it feels.
Pain tells you what to protect.
Together, they narrate the story of embodiment, the ongoing dialogue between your internal world and everything outside it. The next time you run your hand along a surface, pause. That simple act involves millions of neurons translating mechanical energy into experience, temperature into emotion, discomfort into awareness. Your body is not just a vessel, it's a storyteller, writing, in the language of sensation, the biography of your existence. Before words, before language, there was touch. It was the first form of communication between living beings, and it remains the most profound. A newborn, unable to speak, understands a mother's warmth. A friend's hand on your shoulder says more than 100 sentences. A single embrace can quiet storms that language cannot name. Touch is not merely physical, it is emotional electricity, a biological signal that carries the code of connection. The emotional architecture of touch. When someone touches you gently, receptors in your skin send messages through slow, unmyelinated C-tactile fibers. These fibers do not convey texture or pressure, they carry emotion. They project directly to the insula, the brain's emotional hub, and from there to the orbitofrontal cortex, where sensations gain value, pleasant or threatening, safe or unsafe. This is the pathway of effective touch, the one that tells you you are not alone. Unlike the precise, analytical touch used to feel an object's texture, effective touch is slower, softer, more primal. It's designed for human contact, for hugs, caresses, comfort. It's why a gentle hand can lower your heart rate, reduce cortisol, and even ease pain. The nervous system reads care as safety, and safety as healing. Touch as communication. Touch predates language not only in evolution, but also in development. Infants recognize emotional tones through skin contact long before they understand speech. A firm grip means restraint. A gentle touch means affection. A rhythmic pat means reassurance. Even as adults, we continue to speak through skin. A handshake conveys trust. A tap on the shoulder calls attention. A hug speaks forgiveness, intimacy, or farewell. Touch is a universal language, spoken fluently across cultures, species, and time. When primates groom each other, they're not just cleaning, they're reinforcing social bonds. Oxytocin floods their systems, solidifying trust and group harmony. Humans never lost that ritual, we just replaced it with gestures, embraces, and fleeting brushes of contact that say, "I see you, you belong." The biology of belonging. The science of touch is also the science of connection. Every affectionate contact releases oxytocin, a hormone that builds empathy and trust. It also lowers amygdala activity, quieting fear and anxiety. At the same time, gentle stimulation of skin activates the parasympathetic nervous system, slowing heart rate and deepening breath. Your body listens to kindness. Touch doesn't just happen to you, it reorganizes you. That's why a hug after grief or a caring hand during illness can trigger tears of relief. The nervous system recognizes safety after too long in survival mode. When touch is missing. Deprivation of touch changes the brain. In orphanages where infants receive minimal contact, development slows, stress hormones rise, and emotional regulation falters. In adults, chronic isolation reduces oxytocin sensitivity, dampens immune function, and increases pain perception. To the body, loneliness is physical. It feels like hunger, but for warmth. This is why digital connection, though powerful, cannot fully replace presence. The mind might adapt to words on a screen, but the nervous system still craves touch, that quiet proof of shared existence. Touch as healing. In medicine, touch remains one of the most ancient therapies. A healer's hand on a wound, a nurse adjusting a blanket, a doctor's reassuring pat. These gestures carry neurochemical significance. They activate endorphins, reduce stress, and enhance recovery. In practices like massage therapy, gentle pressure increases serotonin and dopamine, while decreasing cortisol. The result isn't mystical, it's biological empathy. The skin responds to intention. It can tell when touch is mechanical and when it is compassionate. Even self-touch, placing your hand over your heart during fear, can calm the autonomic nervous system. Your body trusts its own gesture of care. The shadows of touch. Yet, like all powerful languages, touch can harm as well as heal. Unwanted or aggressive contact activates the amygdala and periaqueductal gray, regions associated with threat and fear. The same neural system that interprets care also detects violation. That is why trauma related to touch is deeply etched in the nervous system. The brain learns to associate proximity with danger, and every new gesture must earn back its meaning. Touch is sacred because it bypasses words, but that also makes it vulnerable to misuse. To touch someone, even lightly, is to be invited into their nervous system. It demands respect, awareness, and the honesty of intention. Connection beyond words. Touch is where physics meets empathy. It is where electricity becomes emotion, and biology becomes poetry. Every caress, every handshake, every comforting pat is a microcosm of human connection, a transfer of trust across the fragile bridge of skin. When you reach out to another person, you're not just making contact. You're saying, let's share the same world for a moment. That moment might be brief, a second, a heartbeat, a vibration through the air, but the body remembers it longer than words. Touch leaves a trace, not just on skin, but in the architecture of the mind. Closing thought. In the end, we are tactile creatures, woven from sensation and response. We learn love through warmth, safety through presence, and meaning through contact. Touch teaches us that connection is not abstract, it is physical, real, embodied. And though the world grows noisier, the oldest language still whispers beneath all words and signals. A hand extended, a shoulder brushed, a heartbeat shared. Each one says, I am here, and so are you. You open your eyes and see rain tapping against a window. You hear the soft rhythm of drops. You feel the cool glass under your fingertips. Each sense speaks its own language, yet your mind hears a single word: rain. How does the brain weave this unity? How does it turn scattered signals into one seamless world? The fragmented symphony. Every sense begins in isolation. Light hits the retina, a flash of photons. Air vibrates in the ear, a wave of pressure. The skin deforms, a change in texture, in heat. Each event becomes an electric code, distinct, meaningless on its own. The visual cortex decodes shape and color. The auditory cortex translates vibration into tone. The somatosensory cortex maps the pressure of contact. Each region works like a separate musician playing from its own score. And yet, the brain doesn't live in fragments. It lives in integration. In every moment, billions of neurons synchronize their signals, merging vision, sound, and touch into a coherent symphony called perception. The binding of experience. In neuroscience, this mystery is called the binding problem, how separate sensory inputs combine into a single experience. When you see someone speak, the sound of their voice and the movement of their lips arrive in different sensory channels, and even with different timing. The brain's solution? It doesn't wait. It predicts. It uses a vast network, the superior colliculus, posterior parietal cortex, and temporal areas, to align signals through timing and probability. If a sound and a sight occur together often enough, the brain binds them as one event, one cause. That's why you hear a voice coming from moving lips, even though sound and vision are processed miles apart in the cortex. Your mind is not a passive receiver. It is an active editor, constantly stitching, aligning, and guessing. The orchestra of integration. This synchronization is not random, it's rhythmic. Neurons across sensory cortices fire in coordinated gamma oscillations, 40 cycles per second, creating temporal windows where signals can merge. It's as if each sense plays in its own rhythm, but the conductor, the thalamus, keeps them in time. The thalamus, once thought to be a mere relay station, is the silent orchestrator of experience. It filters, prioritizes, and synchronizes the incoming flood of sensory data. When the rhythms align, perception feels seamless. When they fall out of sync, as in certain neurological conditions, the world can fragment into confusion, sound detaching from sight, body detaching from self. The hidden crossroads. There are special places in the brain where senses truly meet. The posterior parietal cortex integrates vision and touch, allowing you to reach for an object you see. The superior temporal sulcus binds vision and sound, enabling you to recognize speech or musical rhythm. The insula merges interoception, the sense of your own heartbeat, hunger, and breath, with external sensations, giving rise to bodily awareness, the feeling of being you. Every second, these crossroads host billions of neural exchanges, converting the chaos of the world into a single stream, the present moment. When integration fails, the weaving can unravel. In synesthesia, the borders between senses blur. Sounds evoke colors, numbers have textures, words taste like metal or honey. In temporal lobe epilepsy, or after hallucinogens, cross-sensory signals can overflow, creating surreal, dreamlike perceptions, a reminder that the mind's unity is not given, but constructed. In contrast, Autism or sensory processing disorders can cause hyper-awareness, every sound, light, and touch arriving unfiltered, without integration. The result isn't excess data, it's too much reality at once. Integration isn't about more sensation, it's about meaning. The predictive brain. Modern neuroscience sees perception not as a one-way process, but as a loop of prediction. The brain doesn't just wait for input, it constantly forecasts it, using prior experiences to guess what the senses will report next. When the guess matches reality, perception feels effortless. When it doesn't, you feel surprise, dissonance, or even fear. That's why illusions work. They exploit the brain's habit of guessing. Your mind fills in what it expects to see, not necessarily what is there. Perception, in this sense, is controlled hallucination. A model of the world updated every millisecond by touch, sound, and light. Unity in the stream. Think of the brain as a loom. Each sense is a thread: color, sound, pressure, temperature. The thalamus and cortex weave these threads into a tapestry that we call reality. You don't perceive light, sound, touch. You perceive a moment. And that moment is seamless only because millions of neural fibers work together to hide their seams. You are not inside your body looking out at the world. You are the process of the world becoming conscious of itself through you. Closing thought. When you close your eyes, the world doesn't vanish. It waits in the neural fabric, ready to be rewoven with the next spark of sensation. The brain's greatest art is not in creating images or sounds, but in fusing them into experience, in turning physics into meaning and sensation into self. The weavers of reality never sleep. They hum beneath every thought, binding your senses into the fragile, miraculous illusion called the world. You walk through a crowded street. Hundreds of sounds, colors, and movements collide around you. Voices, traffic, footsteps, flashing lights. Yet you don't see a chaos of fragments. You see a world. One continuous scene stitched seamlessly together. How does your brain do it? How does it take separate sensory notes and play them as one melody? This is the mystery scientists call the binding problem, the enigma of how the mind unites the many into one. The disassembled world. Imagine every sense as a separate painter. Vision works in light and shadow, hearing in vibration, touch in pressure and heat. Each painter works on a different canvas, yet somehow all their strokes merge into one image, the moment you call now. When photons strike the retina, they become electrical signals. When air molecules move, they create oscillations in the ear. When the skin bends, receptors fire. Each of these signals travels to different parts of the brain: the occipital lobe for vision, the temporal lobe for sound, the parietal lobe for touch. And yet, you don't feel them separately. You don't think, light here, sound there, warmth elsewhere. You think, I'm standing in the sun, listening to the city. The brain, a master illusionist, hides its machinery perfectly. Synchrony, the hidden thread. One idea is that the secret lies in timing. When neurons fire in synchrony, in rhythmic patterns across the brain, the mind interprets them as parts of the same event. Imagine the neurons coding for the sight of a barking dog, and those coding for its sound, firing in perfect rhythm, their oscillations in sync. Your consciousness binds them together, not
a sound and a shape, but a barking dog.
These oscillations,
Often in the gamma range, 30 to 80 Hz, act like the tempo of a song that keeps all instruments in harmony. When synchronization breaks, as in certain neurological disorders, perception itself can fracture. Voices detach from faces, space feels disjointed, the world loses its unity. The role of attention. But synchrony alone isn't enough. Your brain receives far more data than it can consciously process, so it must choose. This is where attention steps in, the spotlight of awareness that binds selected features together. When you focus on one voice in a noisy room, your brain amplifies the neurons responding to that voice and suppresses the others. Attention doesn't just filter information, it glues it together. In a way, attention is the seamstress of consciousness, stitching together the features that matter most, leaving the rest in darkness. Without it, you drown in sensory noise. With it, you experience a coherent world, tailored to your intentions and desires. The predictive trick. Another possibility is that the brain binds not through data, but through expectation. It predicts what the senses will perceive next, and then aligns input around those predictions. This means your mind doesn't wait for the world. It builds the world first, and then adjusts reality to fit. That's why you can read misspelled words easily, or recognize a friend from a glimpse of their silhouette. Your brain fills in gaps, merging incomplete sensory fragments into wholes that make sense. Perception is not recording, it's inference. And like all good inferences, it's sometimes wrong. Optical illusions, mirages, and even hallucinations are failures of this predictive binding, moments when the model overrides the truth. The feeling of unity. When binding works, you experience something beyond physics, continuity. The moment feels unbroken. Sight, sound, and touch arrive as one, immersing you in the illusion of being. But this unity isn't constant. During sleep or anesthesia, the symphony falls silent. Consciousness fades, not because signals stop, but because their rhythm breaks. The binding unravels. When you wake, the threads reweave, and suddenly the world returns, complete, singular, alive. The miracle is not that neurons fire, but that they fire together. When the weave breaks. There are times when this harmony fractures. In schizophrenia, patients may experience auditory and visual signals as detached, a voice that speaks from nowhere, a scene without coherence. In depersonalization, the integration between sensory self and environment weakens. You feel detached, unreal, as if watching yourself from outside. In temporal lobe epilepsy, the brain's synchrony flares into hypercoherence, producing intense unity, visions, insights, even spiritual euphoria. The binding mechanism creates both sanity and transcendence, depending on how tight its weave becomes. The great illusion. Here lies a paradox. Your experience feels singular, but your brain is plural. There is no center in the brain where all senses meet. No single neuron sees or feels. Instead, consciousness emerges from distributed activity, a global pattern formed by millions of interactions. The mind, then, is not a place. It's a process, a self-organizing wave binding motion, sound, and memory into the moment you call now. Unity is the illusion that makes life coherent. But without that illusion, you couldn't think, act, or exist. Closing thought. The world you perceive is not the world that is. It's the world your brain has woven. Every sense a thread, every moment a weave, every perception a tapestry of time, rhythm, and meaning. And though the brain is never truly sure where the boundaries lie, it keeps weaving, endlessly, tirelessly, the pattern that becomes you. Close your eyes for a second. The world disappears, yet when you open them again, nothing seems missing. The scene is still there, smooth and unbroken. But here's the secret. It never was. Your brain doesn't perceive reality continuously. It reconstructs it, piece by piece, frame by frame, like an artist who never stops painting, filling gaps so fast that you never notice the brushstrokes. The flicker of consciousness. Every second, your eyes perform saccades, rapid jumps from point to point, up to 3 times every second. Between these jumps, your vision actually goes dark for milliseconds. The brain suppresses incoming visual input so you don't experience a blur. Yet you never feel the blackout. Instead, your brain merges these snapshots into one fluid picture, like a movie projected by your neurons. This illusion of continuity is your brain's greatest editing trick. It creates the feeling of an unbroken stream, though perception is actually a mosaic of neural snapshots. If consciousness were a film, each frame would be a moment of awareness, stitched together by prediction and memory. The predictive brush. The artist behind this illusion is the predictive brain, a system obsessed with anticipating the next instant. Every moment, your cortex generates expectations about what the next sensory input should be. If reality matches the prediction, smoothness is preserved. If not, you feel surprise, confusion, even awe. That's why a magician's trick works. It hijacks your predictive model, making your brain complete the impossible. You don't just see the world, you predict it. And your predictions arrive slightly before your senses. That's right, you are living a few milliseconds in the past, while your brain paints a version of the world it thinks is happening now. Filling in the gaps. This creative reconstruction doesn't stop at sight. In hearing, your brain smooths over brief silences. When a word is muffled by noise, you still hear it, because your auditory cortex fills it in. In touch, if 2 nearby spots on the skin are stimulated quickly, you perceive motion, a phantom glide between them. Even in emotion, your mind bridges breaks. A sudden shift in expression or tone is interpreted as part of a continuous story, not a random glitch. Continuity is not given, it's manufactured. Your mind hates gaps, so it invents bridges. When the illusion fails. Sometimes the brush falters. Under strobe lights, for instance, motion appears disjointed, a reminder that perception is frame-based. During microsleeps, those half-second lapses of awareness, your consciousness simply blanks out, yet your sense of time remains unbroken. In certain neurological conditions, like akinetopsia, motion blindness, patients can see objects but not movement. The world freezes, changing only in still frames. The brain's stitching mechanism collapses, revealing just how fragile the illusion of continuity is. Even dreams play with this trick. You remember long sequences that never happened. The mind fabricates continuity after the fact, as if to say, the story makes sense now. The flow of time. Continuity isn't just about perception, it's also about time. We feel time as a flow, but in truth,
The brain experiences it in discrete pulses, roughly every 80 to 100 milliseconds. Consciousness flickers like a candle in the wind, but the mind merges these flickers into a stream of awareness. That stream is the illusion of self-moving through time. In moments of danger or awe, this process slows. The flickers widen, making time seem to stretch. In monotony, it accelerates. Moments blur, days collapse. Time is not a river. It is a sequence of neural waves that your mind smooths into current. The painter of worlds. Why does the brain go to such lengths to fabricate continuity? Because survival depends on it. You can't act in a fragmented world. To move, you need stability, a sense that what was there a second ago is still there now. Continuity is the scaffolding of coherence, and coherence is the foundation of agency. The posterior parietal cortex and prefrontal areas maintain these predictive maps, cross-checking sensory data to ensure consistency. Reality, as you experience it, is not a live broadcast. It's a stabilized simulation, rendered just fast enough to fool you. The beauty of the illusion. But this illusion is not deception. It's artistry. The brain paints the gaps not to lie, but to create meaning. It turns noise into narrative, fragments into flow. It transforms existence from a disjointed flicker into a living continuum. Every instant of perception is an act of imagination. The colors you see, the motion you feel, the constancy of now, all are the handiwork of the mind's inner artist. Closing thought. Reality doesn't unfold smoothly. It shatters and reforms in every moment of awareness. But your brain, patient and tireless, keeps redrawing it, each time a little differently, each time convincing you that it was never broken. Continuity is not the truth. It's the gift your brain gives you so that life can feel whole. The painter within never sets down the brush, for if it did, the world would vanish into stillness and silence. Embodied mind. You touch your chest, you feel the gentle rise of breath, the pulse beneath your fingers. This, you think, is me. But what if this feeling, this certainty of self, is just another illusion woven by the senses? The body as anchor. Long before you could speak or think, your body was already mapping the world. Each sensation, the warmth of milk, the pressure of a parent's hand, the rhythm of your heartbeat, taught your nervous system where you end and the world begins. This is the first and oldest knowledge, the knowledge of being embodied. In the brain, this boundary is drawn not by logic, but by touch, by interoception, the sensing of your inner state. The insula, deep within the cortex, collects messages from the viscera, the heartbeat, the breath, the gut's quiet movement, and translates them into a feeling of existence. You don't think, "I exist," you feel it. Your body whispers it to your brain in every beat and breath. The map of the self. In the somatosensory cortex, the body is represented as a distorted little figure, the homunculus. Hands and lips loom large, trunk and legs shrink, a map drawn not by anatomy, but by sensitivity. When you close your eyes and move your hand, the brain updates the map. Every gesture rewrites identity. The self is not fixed. It's a moving coordinate system, constantly recalibrated by sensory input. That's why virtual reality can trick your brain into owning a digital body, or why the rubber hand illusion makes you feel touch on fake skin. Ownership of the body is flexible, but the sense of having a body is the foundation of consciousness. Without it, thoughts float untethered. The mind drifts, lost in abstraction. The body as interpreter. Your body doesn't just sense the world, it gives meaning to it. When you feel a chill, you don't just register temperature, you sense isolation. When warmth spreads through you, it feels like safety, affection, peace. These aren't coincidences, they're ancient associations carved by evolution. The brain's emotional circuits and the body's sensory systems are entangled. The amygdala and hypothalamus translate bodily states into emotions, while the prefrontal cortex labels them with words like fear, joy, or longing. But beneath the words, emotion is always physical. It starts as a vibration in the gut, a tension in the chest, a quickening of breath. Your body is the stage where the mind performs its feelings. The mind that feels itself. Close your eyes again. Notice your breath, the warmth of air through your nostrils, the slow expansion of your ribs. Each sensation is a message, but also a question. Am I still here? Your brain continuously answers it by predicting what your body should feel next. If prediction and reality match, you feel calm. If not, you feel anxiety, dissonance, unease. The sense of self is a contract between expectation and sensation. You are the sum of what you expect to feel and what your nerves actually deliver. This is why meditation, deep breathing, or touch can bring such profound clarity. They synchronize the brain's model of the body with the body itself. When that happens, you feel whole. The fragile border. But this unity can break. In out-of-body experiences, the brain's sensory maps desynchronize. The visual system reports one thing, the vestibular system another. The mind, confused, locates the self outside the body. In depersonalization, the link between interoception and awareness weakens. You still feel sensations, but they no longer feel yours. These experiences reveal that embodiment is not guaranteed. It's maintained, moment by moment, by a fragile balance between sensation and interpretation. Lose that balance, and the self dissolves into a spectator, watching life unfold from elsewhere. The self as ecosystem. Your body is not a single thing, it's an ecosystem. Trillions of cells, a microbiome of bacteria, a network of tissues sharing one electric field of life. Yet the brain treats it as one. Through constant feedback loops, it integrates countless signals into a singular experience. Me. The philosopher Thomas Metzinger once said, "The self is not something inside the brain. It's the brain's model of the organism as a whole." Your body is the reference, the grounding illusion that allows consciousness to orbit without drifting away. Closing thought. You are not a ghost in a machine. You are the machine, and the ghost it generates. Every breath, every heartbeat is part of the story the brain tells itself to stay alive and to know it's alive. The self begins at the skin's edge, but it extends inward, to every cell that hums with energy, every neuron that listens, every quiet pulse that says, "You exist." We often say, "I see the world as it is," but the truth is stranger. You never see the world as it is, only as your brain creates it. Every sensation, every color, every note is not a reflection, but a construction. The brain is not a camera, it is an artist, one that paints reality anew every instant. The myth of the mirror. For centuries, we imagined perception as a mirror. Light enters the eyes, sound reaches the ears, and the mind simply receives, passive, clear, objective. But neuroscience reveals a different story. Between stimulus and awareness lies a labyrinth of transformation. Photons hit the retina, but what you see is not photons. It's patterns of meaning created by the brain. Sound waves strike the eardrum, but what you hear is not vibrations in the air. It's music, language, emotion, a narrative imposed upon the chaos. The mind does not reflect reality, it renders it. The creative cortex. The cerebral cortex, especially its sensory areas, acts like a studio of painters. Visual neurons extract edges, motion, color, and then recombine them in layers. Auditory neurons decompose frequencies, then reassemble them into voices, tones, words. Touch neurons trace the geography of the body, translating electrical impulses into textures, warmth, pressure, pain. But none of these sensations exist by themselves. They gain meaning only when the brain connects them, when the sensory, emotional, and memory circuits blend into a single perceptual experience. Perception is collaboration. It is imagination disciplined by input. The predictive artist. Your brain constantly predicts what the next moment should feel like. It paints the world before the senses confirm it, then corrects its mistakes on the fly. When you walk through your house in darkness, you don't truly see the furniture. Your brain recalls it, sketches it, so you move with confidence through the unseen. When the prediction matches reality, you feel clarity. The world feels stable and real. When it fails, you feel surprise, confusion, wonder. That's what perception is, the balance between expectation and correction, the dance between imagination and evidence. Meaning through creation. A newborn's world is a blur of color and sound. Nothing is distinct, nothing makes sense. But with experience, the brain begins to carve order. Edges become objects, sounds become words. Learning is not storing data. It's refining the brushstrokes by which the mind paints the world. Each perception, then, is not an arrival, it's a choice. The brain decides what to emphasize, what to ignore, what to interpret as threat, beauty, or truth. Reality is not imposed upon you, it's co-created by you. Emotion as color. If perception is painting, then emotion is the palette. The same sunset looks different to a lover, a soldier, or a mourner. The photons are identical, but the meaning is utterly transformed. Emotion shapes perception by biasing the brain's predictions. Fear sharpens edges, darkens shadows. Joy softens lines, widens the world. Grief slows time. Curiosity speeds it up. We don't see to feel, we feel to see. Reality as consensus. What we call reality is not a single painting, it's a shared exhibition. Each brain paints its own version of the world, but through communication, we align our illusions enough to call it truth. Language, culture, science, they are tools for synchronizing perception. When two people look at the same object and agree it is red, what they've truly done is matched
their inner models. Reality, then, is not discovered. It is negotiated. The fractured canvas. Sometimes this harmony breaks. In hallucinations, the brain's creative force overwhelms sensory input. It paints without reference to reality. In neglect syndrome, half the visual field disappears. The artist forgets to finish the canvas. In synesthesia, the senses blend. Sounds gain color. Numbers have texture. These aren't malfunctions. They are reminders that perception is a process, not a window. The artist within. Every moment of awareness is a small act of creation. When you wake, the brain rebuilds the world from fragments, shapes, memories, feelings. When you close your eyes, the artist keeps painting, in dreams, imagination, memory. Even silence becomes a texture, darkness a color. The mind refuses the void. It fills it with itself. Closing thought. You are not the observer of the world. You are its author. The world you perceive is not outside you. It's a living artwork projected from the inside out. Light, sound, touch. These are only hints. The rest, meaning, depth, beauty, continuity, is added by the brush of the mind. Reality is not given, it is drawn, and every thought, every feeling is another stroke on the infinite canvas of perception. You are a melody, not one written in notes, but in pulses, colors, and vibrations. Every moment, your eyes, ears, and skin play together, and the harmony they form is what you call yourself. The orchestra within. Think of your senses as instruments in an orchestra. Vision is the violin, swift, articulate, bright. Hearing is the cello, deep, resonant, emotional. Touch is the percussion, grounding, immediate, raw. Each plays its own line, but the true beauty emerges when they synchronize, when the conductor, the brain, turns raw sensation into symphony. Without that integration, you would not be. There would be only fragments. Light without meaning, sound without emotion, contact without comfort. Your consciousness exists only where these sensations meet. The unity of the senses. In the superior temporal sulcus, neurons respond to both sight and sound, the flash and the clap that form a single event. In the parietal cortex, signals from vision, hearing, and touch converge, creating a spatial map of your body in the world. These integrations form what neuroscientists call multisensory binding, the mechanism that allows you to perceive one coherent reality. When you see lips move and hear a voice, you perceive speech, not two separate inputs. When someone touches your hand and you see it happen, the touch becomes more intense, more real. The senses strengthen each other. Their harmony is the foundation of certainty. The birth of the I. In the quiet between these signals, something extraordinary happens. The brain doesn't just register input, it registers who is receiving it. That's how the sense of self emerges. Every sensation has two sides, the world that acts and the body that feels. Touch is the most primal reminder of that boundary. To feel something is to know, I am here. To see and hear is to locate oneself within space. To move and feel resistance is to sense one's own agency. The I is not an idea. It's a rhythm, a steady coordination between sensing and being sensed.
the personal filter. But every brain tunes its symphony differently. Some people are visual thinkers. Their inner world is made of shapes and light. Others hear life as melody, rhythms of speech, tone, memory. Some live through touch, kinesthetic souls who think by moving. Your personality is, in part, the tuning curve of your senses. Even two people watching the same sunset don't see the same world. Their eyes receive the same photons, but their brains orchestrate different meanings. Your perception style shapes your temperament, your creativity, even your memories. You are the sum of what your senses choose to emphasize. Emotion as the conductor. If the senses are instruments, then emotion is the conductor. It decides which note to amplify, which to mute. When fear rises, the senses narrow. Vision sharpens, hearing heightens, time slows. When calm returns, the focus softens, details blur into flow, the melody turns gentle again. Emotion sets the tempo of experience. Without it, the music of perception would lose its shape and story. The harmony of memory. Every moment of perception is also a moment of memory. The hippocampus records the patterns your senses play, not just what you saw, but how it felt. Later, when a sound or scent returns, the entire melody plays again. That's why the smell of rain can bring back childhood, or a familiar song can move you to tears. Your senses are the strings of time. They pull memory into the present, making identity a continuous performance. When the symphony breaks. When the sensory harmony falters, the sense of self trembles. In sensory deprivation, when light, sound, and touch are stripped away, the mind begins to hallucinate, creating sensations to fill the void. In overload, as in autism or trauma, the symphony becomes dissonant. Too many notes, too much intensity. The world feels sharp, painful, unfiltered. In both extremes, the lesson is the same. Our sense of reality depends on balance within the orchestra. The living score. Your senses never stop composing. Even as you sleep, the internal music continues, the rustle of the heart, the rhythm of the breath, the silent vibration of neural fire. These rhythms synchronize to maintain coherence, the brain's way of saying, I am still one. It's the same harmony that holds consciousness together, moment after moment, like a melody that refuses to end. Closing thought. You are not a spectator of the world. You are its living symphony. Every second, your senses play the score of your existence. Your eyes give it light, your ears give it rhythm, your skin gives it depth and emotion. And the brain, that tireless conductor, turns it all into a story called being alive. When the instruments fall silent, the music remains, echoing in memory, woven into the fabric of time. For as long as your senses sing together, you are real. You are whole. You are. The gift of sensation. There is a silence behind all sound, a darkness beneath every color, a stillness beneath every touch. And yet, from that silence, darkness, and stillness rises the miracle of perception, the bridge between the inner and the outer worlds. The miracle of connection. Every sense you possess is a thread thrown outward from the self, a fragile, luminous filament reaching into the unknown. Light touches the retina, vibration brushes the ear, A wave of air grazes the skin, and suddenly something outside becomes you. In that instant, the boundary between subject and object dissolves. You don't just see the tree, you become the seeing of the tree. You don't just hear the rain, you are the rhythm of the falling drops. Perception is not contact, it is communion. It's the way reality and consciousness recognize each other and whisper, "I am here. You are real." The fragile gift. The senses are not perfect. They distort, omit, simplify. But perhaps that's what makes them precious. They protect us from the unbearable infinity of detail, reducing the chaos of the universe into something we can hold, something we can feel, something we can love. Every glance, every sound, every touch is a selection, a choice of what to bring into being. The brain does not show us everything. It shows us what matters: the shimmer of water, the warmth of a voice, the pressure of a hand in ours. These are not just signals, they are meanings. The senses translate existence into intimacy. The bridge between worlds. The sense is to cross a bridge, from the physical to the mental, from the outer to the inner, from the infinite to the human. And each of us builds that bridge differently. The painter's world is made of light, the musician's of resonance, the sculptor's of touch. The scientist listens to patterns, the poet feels the wind between the words. Through the senses, we do not merely perceive the world, we shape it, we return its gaze, we complete its unfinished song. Gratitude. Pause for a moment. Close your eyes. Listen. The world is still here, humming through vibration, whispering through temperature, singing through pressure and light. You are surrounded by symphonies you did not compose, yet you are their instrument. To sense is to belong. And in that belonging, you discover what it means to exist. This, the simple gift of sensation, is the root of awe, the seed of wonder, the foundation of consciousness. But perception is only the beginning. If our senses build the bridge, then the next question is, what lies across it? What happens when the signals reach the stage of the mind? How does the brain transform light, sound, and touch into experience, into the vivid inner movie we call reality? In the next chapter, we'll cross that bridge. We'll enter the inner theater of perception, where sensations become stories, where meaning is born, and where consciousness creates the illusion of the world, not outside, but within.